too. Sometimes that works. Maybe it's working today. Maybe that's working today. Eli James coming up, folks. Broadcasting today from the middle of Jade Helm. And I suppose we will be talking about that. Because
1 minute until showtime.
I'm right here in the epicenter of Jade Helm, Big Spring, Texas. Didn't know it wasn't noted, wasn't noted for much of anything except a big, nice hotel and a lot of clean water.
Yeah.
But,
not in the Gulf of Mexico, though.
Then I moved in.
Yeah, right.
And suddenly the army was called up. I don't know, Eli.
Yeah, some of the neighborhood was crawling with feds and military.
Well, let's talk about that. How do we handle that? I mean,
what's that about? Man, you draw a crowd, Clay.
I guess so, man. I guess so. I thought it was kind of unique. Well, wait a minute. Let me get on the air here. Let's get the music started.
Okay. All right.
Don't want to.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Log Talk Radio.
Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is a very real prospect of a new world order. The new world order does not mean surrendering our national sovereignty or forfeiting our interests.
He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial.
How can I convince you when your ears refuse to hear? You turn your heart away from me each time when I draw near. Your eyes refuse to meet with mine, they glance away in fear.
Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath. To defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
Well, it doesn't show. How can I contain this anguish and this pain? Knowing that your eyes blinded by the light.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
Blinded by the light.
Catch the Free American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger runs inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon out of the sky and drop the sun. Where
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamericans.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8631.
It's probably a real shame, but I still haven't got that number memorized, and it's up on my website, up on the banner of the website, and it's announced on every show. But kind of handy, you know. You can be a truck driver and driving along and turn on your cell phone and catch the Free American show. My guest today is Eli James, and as I told you, I am Clay Douglas. I am the author, one of the authors, of Mystery Babylon, the New World Order Unveiled. Eli James is my co-author and the author of many other books, and a pastor you can actually trust. At least I trust him. There's a few out there that don't, Eli. Or should I call you Abraham or whatever the hell they call you? What? You know, when we came out with the book Mystery Babylon, and I printed my first copies, I took it to some biker rallies and biker bars and passed it out or showed it to people and sold a couple. And the next thing I know, I was barred from any biker event, any biker run. People were trying to pick fights with me, which isn't real hard to do. But and I'm trying to get down to the what's going on here? What are you upset with me about? What? Why, you're selling that book to raise money for a snitch named Huevos. Sorry, man. I don't even like Huevos Rancheros, you know. I don't know.
No, wait a minute. Clay, how many Mexicans are named after eggs? That's ridiculous. Yeah, it's like Al Qaeda.
Let's pronounce that correctly. Al Qaeda.
What self-respecting Muslim group would call itself the toilet?
Well, I kind of like ISIS. That's the new enemy. And let's see what somebody uses that. Though the Israeli Intelligence Service, the Secret Intelligence Service, that's the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service, which is good description for the CIA too, isn't it?
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah, it's like the Mexican organized crime, the drug cartel, calling itself Huevos Rancheros. Right?
Well, you know, the thing is, this is serious here, Eli, because I did a run.
A lot of people are dying.
While I was in Arizona, while I was in Tucson, I put on a benefit run, a bike run, over in Tombstone in that county, and the sheriff there was a good guy. And within a week or two after I put on a run, which wasn't very successful because somehow somebody kept calling in and pretending to be me or doing something to try to disrupt the event, even calling Sheriff Devers, Larry Devers, to tell him why he shouldn't be doing this run with Clay Douglas.
Right, sure.
And 2 weeks later, he was dead. Run off the road, some kind of accident, and died. Here is a sheriff of 40 years, 30 years, or something like that, and he runs off the road and is killed in a police car.
Right. Well, that's what happens to anybody who holds public office who contradicts Jewish policy. They wind up dead. And that's what happened to JFK, almost happened to Andrew Jackson, happened to Lincoln, happened to Huey Long. There's a whole string of important political figures in America's history who have contradicted Jewish policy and wound up dead. So that's old news for us. But the mainstream media never reports on these things. By the way, you know, I think the most important story in America right now is the Baltimore riots, Baltimore race riots, and that's what they are. They're race riots.
Well, you know,
led by blacks.
Let me. I just so happened I brought up something on that, and it's the text under the cartoon. The cartoon says, "I'm always disappointed when a liar's pants don't actually catch on fire."
Yeah, right.
Baltimore
Exactly.
Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake told a news conference Monday night as fires burned and hundreds of thugs, the mayor's words, looted and destroyed her city. I'll say the very blatant mischaracterization of my words was not helpful today, she said. She called it unfortunate.
No, you have to give space. You have to give space to the demonstrators. Yeah, you better stay as far away as they can throw a brick.
That's
how
right.
much space you need
And
to
how
give
did
them.
all those bricks end up in baskets on these streets? How can you tell me that? How did that happen?
Yeah, right.
She called it
Well, these
unfortunate.
rioters turn everything into weapons. You know, I mean, they're going down, smashing windows in of police cars, private cars, stores. Now, of course, all of that rioting and terrorism is sure to lead to more freedom for blacks, right? Isn't that how it works? Isn't violence the sure method to get freedom? Isn't that how it works? Terrorism? Isn't terrorism the sure method to get freedom? But they have all kinds of freedom. They vote. They get welfare. They really have more than white people do, because white people don't have all this welfare. We're the ones paying the taxes for their welfare benefits.
It must be. It must be the Arabs who hate us both whites and blacks, for our freedoms.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, they hate us because of George Bush. That's why they hate us. Not because we have freedom, right? They don't even know what freedom means, so they can't even hate something they don't understand.
This mayor, what did this mayor exactly say? She says in the follow-up that it's unfortunate that the media decided to mischaracterize my words and tried to use it as a way to say that we were inciting violence. She made a comment after reporters suggested her own words Saturday may have contributed to the problem. And on Saturday night, after the violence began to escalate in Baltimore, the mayor said she was working with police to make sure they protected the protesters' right to free speech. Now,
yeah, right. Well, I mean, throwing a brick is freedom of speech, isn't it? Smashing in car windows is speaking with your hands, right?
Yeah, I think she says it's a very delicate balancing act. Juggling those bricks is a very delicate balancing act, because while we tried to make sure that the protesters were protected from the cars and other things that were going on, we also gave those who wish to destroy space to do that as well.
Right. Well, we can see that justice is blind only when black people are the guilty perpetrators. And here we have the ultimate contradiction, Clay. We have hate speech laws by which white people are cast as demonized before the public. The media rakes them over the coals if you happen to choose to use the word nigger or even anything other than African American. And they can even lose their jobs, even go to prison for simply saying words. But here, mobs of black rioters and terrorists smashing windows, burning cars, attacking innocent civilians. They're not even criticized. They say, oh, well, they've been persecuted for hundreds of years, and therefore that justifies looting, burning, raping, murdering.
Eli, they learn very well from the Jews. They slap themselves and then cry out. You know, it's a warfare by deception is their damn motto.
Right.
And we expose in Mystery Babylon, folks, we expose the whole Operation Watchtower. That was George Bush's drug smuggling operation, Bill Clinton's drug smuggling operation in cooperation with Manuel Noriega, and they used the Special Forces to do it. Now we got the Special Forces coming to Midland. Kind of interesting, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I moved to Big Spring, Midland, Odessa area, and suddenly we got war games here, and Texas is listed as hostile. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Texan, man. I was born here, I was raised here, and I've been in 49 states to see what the other states were like. I want to know both sides of the story.
Right. Well, Clay, it's getting very, very difficult to be a white police officer in America because if you try to prevent blacks from committing crimes, then you will be accused of racism. Okay, that's the state of affairs. There's no way you can have justice when a particular group of people, namely blacks, are not prosecutable for crimes.
Well, you know, we've both been in Christian identity especially, and the whole attack on Christian identity by the Department of Homeland Security is why we did the book Mystery Babylon, because you don't know what Christian identity is. You don't know who you are, and the Bible told you you'd forget who you were, didn't it?
That's right. That's right. Paul says we're blinded in part. Why are we blinded? Because, well, we were cast off into the wilderness by Yahweh into Europe. Europe was a wilderness in 745 BC. And so it's taken us another 2,500 years to remember who we are. Right? So, but here's a headline. You know, I mean, there are obviously the Jew-controlled press. And by the way, folks, anybody listening, Clay and I have been telling you for years that the mass media is nothing but Jewish make-believe, and that they never tell you the truth about anything. It's all Jewish theater, and that they will never tell the truth about black rioting. They will always blame it on whitey, and then if white people get shot by black cops, the Jew-controlled press makes no mention of it whatsoever. But if a black person, a guilty black person who attacks a white police officer, gets shot by that white police officer in self-defense, well, then it's the white person who committed a crime, not the black person. And that black, namely Michael Brown, he was just coming out of robbing a convenience store and intimidating some of its customers. Of course, the Jew-controlled media never mentions these things, right? Here's an article, September 28, 2014. Ferguson continues to burn as feds encourage rioters. Police shot by crooks. So again, if black people riot, that's lawful. Doesn't matter who they kill or hurt or maim. Doesn't matter whose business they destroy. That's justifiable because 150 years ago, less than 1% of Southerners owned slaves. Okay, that's the logic here. Okay, it says Ferguson police chief sparks riots after trying to join protesters calling for his resignation. The poor sap apologized to the Brown family and was rewarded with more riots. Why were there more riots? Well, because the officer was cleared in local courts, and he was actually cleared by the feds. So he was cleared twice as acting in self-defense. What more can you do, Clay? Do you have to allow yourself to be killed by a black rioter or a black thug or a black criminal before you can defend yourself? Is that what this country has come to?
Isn't this exactly what happened to the white Christians of Russia when the Bolsheviks, when the Jews took over? Suddenly, you couldn't do anything right. There was, if you mentioned the fact that Marx was Jewish or Lenin was Jewish,
you're anti-Semite.
You're an anti-Semite, and they have done the same things to us. They have not.
No, you're a neo-Nazi if you mention that Marx was Jewish.
Right.
And by the way,
Hitler didn't even like the term Nazi. That was given to us by what, maybe the Ashkenazis that control the newspapers?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yes.
Hell, let's just name this movement after us.
Nazis are the Jews.
Let's name this movement after us. I mean, we are from Khazaria in the first place, as Benjamin Friedman, a Jewish historian, put it. You know that so-called Jews, these so-called Jews, never saw the biggest con in history, trying to make you believe Jesus was somehow Jewish.
Right. Yeah, the furthest thing from the truth. He called the Pharisees out and condemned them from here to California. Right? But of course, the Judeo-Christian churches don't teach this. They teach that the Jews are God's chosen people, even though Jesus himself utterly denies it. 1 John chapter 2, verse 22, he who has not the Son has not the Father. So if you deny the Son, you don't have the Father. By the way, you're not that far from Mr. Hagee. Maybe you should send him that personally deliver that verse to him, right? Because he's another one of these clowns who teaches that the Jews are God's chosen and that they have their own path to salvation, even though denying Christ to the fullest. This, folks, is what you've got today. You've got Judeo-Christian pastors who are Jew puppets. You've got politicians who are Jew puppets. You've got prostitutes who are Jew puppets. And you've got leftists all over the place who are Jew puppets, although most of the leftists don't realize it. Okay? The previous three groups I mentioned absolutely realize that they're Jew puppets, that they're consciously working for the establishment of the Zionist occupation government. Okay? And we've been telling you for years that it's going to come to this, that these race riots are coming. Now they're here. When will you start believing us? When we can predict the future based on our knowledge of what the Jews are doing.
I don't know that we can. Eli, the whole elitist, the Jewish little plan here, I think you can get all the details. It's called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, and it doesn't matter who wrote it. They're dead now. It matters who is using that today.
Yeah, right. Well, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion are authentic. They are confirmed by all Jewish literature side by side with it, such as the Talmud, such as communism, such as their banking operations. I mean, it's only the Jews they're the only ones who are capable of implementing the protocols, and they have. It's just that simple. Okay? No one else has the economic power to do so. This article continues. The president and our so-called attorney general both heavily contributed to these riots. Instead of calling for calm and waiting for a proper investigation, this was turned into a witch hunt of blame, of course, off the white officer, and of course all whites by implication, white privilege, right? Jewish privilege and Jewish wealth are never mentioned. Instead of calling for calm and waiting for a proper investigation, this was turned into a witch hunt of blame while the family of the thug continued to demand his past antisocial behaviors be covered up. Liberals have a lot of blame for this mess. Meanwhile, Ferguson is now on the death list of previous riot cities like Detroit or Newark. Any whites left will flee. By the way, the family of the officer have been hit with death threats. They're in fear of their lives because these black rioters are being coddled, encouraged, and praised by the Jew-controlled media. Okay? So now we're living in a state of terror with the Jews using black terrorists to impose terror on white people.
And they will do the same thing with the Mexicans coming in here. We've got the blacks are being inflamed. The Mexicans are being imported here, Guatemalans or whatever, Catholics. It's they're pulling the strings. They're being imported in here, and they're the ones that are going to...
Well, yeah, and Eric Holder and Barack Obama actually sent arms to the narco gangs of Mexico so they could come in and invade America.
And the Chechens over in Russia, because of what the United States and the UN is doing in the new Khazarian homeland, they call it the Ukraine, folks. Ukraine and Georgia, are the original home of the Ashkenazi Jews, the Khazarians.
Yeah. Here's next sentence here. PR man hired by the city of Ferguson is fired because he was convicted of reckless homicide for shooting man dead in 2006. Okay, this it doesn't say whether. Oh yeah, okay. They hired this black dude to fix things, but he has blood on his hands. So this is the kind. So once you have black police officers, and we found out a black mayor running the city of Baltimore, they encourage the rioters too. In fact, they're guilty of committing homicide themselves. They hired this black dude to fix things, but he has blood on his hands. If black leaders want the death of black men to cease, or at least to slow down, they have to confront the fact that they are their own worst enemies. They literally hate each other to death, and this death spiral is getting worse and worse, not better. Do you think this is an overstatement, Clay, or is this statement right on the money?
I think it's right on the money. They tried to do
no,
this
it's
100
racist,
years
Clay.
ago.
It's racist.
This whole thing. You know, I mean, that's what they've charged me with. Oh, you're a racist, Clay, and
yeah,
you can't pull any facts up about that.
Right.
The closest you can come is what I admit to. I was approached by a big black football player, weightlifter, up at a penthouse in Miami, on Miami Beach, at a party.
Uh-huh.
How do you feel about us black folks, he says. And I reached out and I patted him on the muscular shoulder and I said, well, I got to be straight with you, brother. I don't like niggers, white or black.
Right.
White or black. Well, you might
right.
be okay.
Oh, Jewish.
Yeah. You might be okay. Yeah, you might be okay too. I just wouldn't get in my face like that again.
Right. Now, see, the point here that this author is making should be understood, that namely, when you excuse lawlessness by blacks against whites, you actually create more lawlessness, black versus black. Okay? You understand the point? Let me read the next sentence.
Go ahead.
The new mayor of New York City has restarted the mass murder of blacks, that is, by killing each other, by stopping the police searches of black males who kill, far, far more frequently than any other group. So they have stopped searches of black males to see, what they're up to, and therefore they're free to kill each other more frequently. So if any black thinks that the so-called profiling, that ceasing to stop blacks who look suspicious, and that by ceasing that there will be more justice for the vast majority of blacks, they are wrong, because these holdups, in most cases, if the guy's hasn't got a weapon or hasn't got any drugs or anything, et cetera, they'll let him go. But if he's acting suspiciously, like Tremont, what's his name, the guy who assaulted Zimmerman.
Trayvon,
if they're acting
Trayvon Martin.
Yeah, Trayvon. If they're acting suspiciously, I was detained by police. I was basically working in the backyard, and all of a sudden, 4 or 5 plainclothes policemen converged on me and said that I resembled a description of someone they were chasing. And so, they threw me up against the wall, patted me down, and said, "Well, I'm just working here, man."
They were probably looking for Joe November or something like that, Eli.
Yeah, right. So they proceeded on their way because they realized it was a case of mistaken identity. All right. So, but the vast majority of stops, when they're looking for a criminal, I mean, if they find the criminal, it usually turns out to be black, right?
It was about 50 years ago that the newspaper stopped telling you if the perpetrator was black or not. They wouldn't.
Right.
They wouldn't talk about skin color or ethnicity.
Oh, by the way, the NAACP is not a black organization either. Okay.
That's right. Jewish.
The NAACP has always been run by Jews, and it still is run by Jews today, because they use the NAACP to manipulate blacks and to create a sense of entitlement among blacks, that the whitey has always persecuted them, and therefore they should constantly demand more stuff from whitey, which we pay for through our extortion tax dollars. And then we get the consequences of their hatred when we don't give them enough free stuff.
Now, we just talked yesterday, you can still hear that with John DeNugent, about Leo Frank.
Leo Frank.
The ADL came from, this is a rapist and a murderer, and they tried to blame it on blacks.
Right.
And that's how the ADL was formed, and the ADL does the same thing today. Yeah, Clay Douglas started the militia. They just don't tell you I did it in the governor's office. They try to make it sound like some kind of plot.
Well, the ADL was founded as a result of the Leo Frank trial. Now, Leo Frank murdered, he probably sexually assaulted poor Mary Fagan as well, and stuffed her body in the boiler, and tried to blame the crime on one of his black workers.
Yeah, who supposedly wrote a note, except
right.
He was illiterate, so...
Right. It came out in the middle of the trial that the black, he forged a confession note by his black worker. And, of course, it came out during the middle of the trial that the black worker was illiterate and could not have written that note. He was duly tried and convicted, sentenced to death. But several Jews from the state of New York converged upon the governor's office of the state of Georgia and paid him a large sum of money to commute the sentence. After which, the Ku Klux Klan dragged Leo Frank out of the prison and hung him publicly. Okay? This was called vigilante justice, when the Jews bribed the governor of a state to stay in execution of a murder where the guy was caught red-handed forging a confession note. You know that a major injustice has been committed by the Jews and by that governor whom they bribed. And so the ADL was founded to hone their art of using the media to demonize anyone who opposes Jewish power. Okay? That's how the ADL was founded. People need to know that. It was founded upon the murder of an innocent white woman by a Jew and the subsequent attempt to cover up his guilt by wealthy Jews. That's how the ADL was founded, folks. You need to know that. And, of course, the Jews will continue to make excuses for Leo Frank, which is this more Jewish propaganda. So now, Clay Douglas and I have been telling you what the Jews really do, how evil they really are, what genocidal maniacs they really are in fomenting revolutions, communist revolutions, and staging wars in which white nations are pitted against each other, and millions of innocent people die in order to maintain the global Jewish money racket. Okay? But their local preacher tells them, oh, the Jews are God's chosen people. They can't do anything wrong. And this is the level of mentality of the Judeo-Christian churches today. It's also the level of mentality of the liberals and the socialists and the educators, so-called educators. The purpose of public education is to stupidify the people. That's the purpose of public education.
I call it the public
out of school.
I call it the public pool system. It's the public pool system, and that's what it's there for, folks. Frankly, the mainstream colleges and the education system, they didn't do nothing for me. They didn't teach me to read. My grandfather did that, sitting on his lap. So when I could read 1,000 words a minute when I went into grade school. It's we would do so much better now. The schools have been just. You want to get your kids killed? Send them to Columbine. Send them to Sandy Hook, and the Sandy Hook's the strangest of all because I don't believe anybody was killed there. Yeah.
Mary Fagan. By the way, there's an article published on American Mercury Internet today, April 29, 2015. 100 reasons Leo Frank is guilty, proving that anti-Semitism had nothing to do with his conviction and proving that his defenders have used frauds and hoaxes for 100 years, by Bradford L. Huey, H-U-I-E. By the way, Huey Long was another American politician murdered by the Jews because he was threatening to run. In fact, he had declared his candidacy to run against Zionist and communist federal dictator Roosevelt, and Huey Long would have beat the pants off of Roosevelt. So a Jewish MD was selected to murder Huey Long. Okay, and he was promptly executed before he could be put on trial. It kind of the same thing happened to Lee Harvey Oswald, who was set up by a Jewish assassin, right? We have, so people can't testify. Lee Harvey Oswald was murdered so that he couldn't testify. The last thing the Jews wanted was for Lee Harvey Oswald to be put in court.
You see that on TV a lot, but it's always aimed to protect the Jews rather than... Right.
And Mary Fagan looks like a typical American white girl. Nice brunette hair, pretty face. And this Jew, Leo M. Frank, who was head of Atlanta's B'nai B'rith, a Jewish fraternal order, was eventually convicted of the murder and sentenced to hang. After a concerted and lavishly financed campaign by the American Jewish community, Frank's death sentence was commuted to life in prison by an outgoing governor. But he was snatched from his prison and cell and hung by a lynching party consisting in large part of leading citizens outraged by the commutation order, and none of the lynchers were ever prosecuted or even indicted for their crime. Well, because they were carrying out the sentence.
That's right.
Which the Jews had commuted through bribery. One result of Frank's trial and death was the founding of the still powerful Anti-Defamation League. And, of course, the Jews are still claiming Leo Frank was in. Well, of course, whenever you have a high-ranking Jew put on trial, the Jews will pull out all the stops and put all the pressure they can on politicians and media to falsely portray that person's innocence. Okay. It has been proved beyond any shadow of doubt that either Leo Frank or National Pencil Company sweeper Jim Conley was the killer of Mary Fagan. This is the propaganda put out by the Jews. Every other person who was in the building at the time has been fully accounted for. Those who believe Frank to be innocent say without exception that Jim Conley must have been the killer. Jim Conley was the black guy who, the illiterate black person who Leo Frank forged a confession. Okay. And in the courtroom, that confession note was proved to be a forgery when the court found out that Jim Conley was illiterate. Okay? So, Leo Frank was 100% guilty, but being a member, according to this article, the head of B'nai B'rith in Atlanta, they could not permit such a high-ranking Jew to be publicly exposed. Okay? Because the Jewish con game of perpetual innocence and victimization must be maintained at all costs. And so the Jews will go to any extreme to maintain this mythology. Okay? You think that's an overstatement, Clay?
No, I don't. And, you know, it's one of my films I made was called No Such Thing as the New World Order. Because
right.
this is
There's no conspiracies, Clay.
Yeah.
You're just a conspiracy nut.
Yeah, tell that to Jesus, you know. I just put a film up. I just put a film up that somebody had made at the Conspiracy Con back a few years back. And they asked me what my favorite conspiracy theory was, and I said, well, 9/11, of course. George Bush's 9/11, a version of 9/11, puts to shame any conspiracy theory I've ever heard. He wants you to believe a bunch of Arabs in a cave in Afghanistan made the U.S. Air Force stand down? Yeah.
Yeah, with nothing but box cutters.
Yeah, boy, bad
a dozen Arabs with box cutters held the world at bay. Yeah, that isn't the most ridiculous conspiracy I've ever heard. Right?
Right.
But the mainstream media never makes fun of that conspiracy theory. They're the ones promoting it. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Here is the actual flow of events here. Only Leo Frank had the opportunity to be alone with Mary Fagan, and he admits he was alone with her in his office when she came to get her pay. And in fact, he was completely alone with her on the second floor. Had Jim Conley been the killer, he would have had to attack her practically right at the entrance to the building where he sat almost all day, where people were constantly coming in and going, and where several witnesses noticed Conley with no assurance of even a moment of privacy. Number two, Leo Frank had told Newt Lee, the pencil factory's night watchman, to come earlier than usual at 4 p.m. on the day of the murder. But Frank was extremely nervous when Lee arrived. The killing of Mary Fagan had occurred between 3 and 4 hours before, and her body was still in the building, and insisted that Lee leave and come back in 2 hours. All right, so if anybody's acting suspiciously, it's Leo Frank. Number three, when Lee then suggested he could sleep for a couple of hours on the premises, and there was a cot in the basement near the place where Lee would ultimately find the body, Frank refused to let him. Leo could also have slept in the packing room adjacent to Leo Frank's office, but Frank insisted that Lee had to leave and have a good time instead. This violated a corporate rule that once the night watchman entered the building, he could not leave until he handed over the keys to the day watchman. Newt Lee, though strongly suspected at first, was manifestly innocent and had no reason to lie. It had good relations with Frank and no motive to hurt him. Okay? Who's acting suspiciously here, Clay? Leo Frank or Conley? Right? Number four, when Lee returned at 6, Frank was even more nervous and agitated than 2 hours earlier, according to Lee. He was so nervous he could not operate the time clock properly. Something had to be done hundreds of times before. Leo Frank officially started to work at the National Pencil Company on Monday morning, August 10, 1908. 22 days later, on September 1st, 1908, he was elevated to the position of superintendent of the company and served in this capacity until he was arrested on Tuesday morning, April 29, 1913. So he was there approximately 5 years, 4.5 years, 5 years. And, of course, being a very high-ranking member of B'nai B'rith, was duly promoted. And Newt Lee was also a black man. Number 5, when Leo Frank came out of the building around 6, he met not only Lee, but John Milton Grant, a former employee who was a friend of Mary Fagan. Lee says that when Frank saw Gant, he visibly jumped back and appeared very nervous when Gant asked to go into the building to retrieve some shoes that he had left there. According to E.F. Holloway, J.M. Gantt had known Mary for a long time and was one of the only employees Mary Fagan spoke with at the factory. Gantt was the former paymaster of the firm. Frank had fired him 3 weeks earlier, allegedly because the payroll was short about $1. And of course, the Jews extort trillions from the American people through their Federal Reserve banking scam. But if you misplace a single dollar, your Jew boss will fire you. Was Gantt's firing the case of the dragon getting rid of the prince to get the princess? Was Frank jealous of Gantt's closeness with Mary Fagan? Unlike Frank, Gantt was tall, with bright blue eyes and handsome features. Jewish men are just so deprived of good looks. Number 6. After Frank returned home in the evening after the murder, he called Newt Lee on the telephone and asked him if everything was all right at the factory, something he had never done before. A few hours later, Lee would discover the mutilated body of Mary Fagan at the pencil factory basement. So, I ask you, Clay, there's several more points here. I don't think we have to belabor it. Who is acting suspiciously? Leo Frank or the black doorman? The black janitor? Who's acting more suspiciously?
Frank was guilty, and a jury found him guilty. So, you know,
yeah.
I don't see any difference in what the so-called Klansmen did,
right.
And what happened when some veterans.
Well, this is the reason why the Klan came into being, because the Jews have been corrupting one public official after another, and the white people in the South were getting pretty damn tired of it. Okay?
Yep.
But now the Jews have taken over every official office of the government, every institution in America, including public education.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, because I've got, I just put this up from Gordon Duff that we've talked on here several times about the Jade Helm. Now, Jade Helm is happening right here. But Gordon Duff, who also is demonized about as much as you and I are by probably the same people,
right?
He says America is now occupied by a foreign anti-America occupying force.
Sure.
Department of Homeland Security that intends to oppress, tyrannize, disarm, and systematically mass murder up to 90% of all Americans. If they can get the blacks to do it for them, they will use it. How many Americans have been raped and murdered by the illegal aliens that they sent up here? Every day, Duff says, Colonel Gordon Duff, every day more and more basic freedoms and good American jobs are being removed from America. The very best cure is to completely decapitate the world Zionists from their fiat money.
Right. It's extremely important for people to realize how fiat money is used by the global Jewish banksters to manipulate the nations. And they, for example, the Federal Reserve Bank, all it has to do is print money and hire a bunch of corporate gangsters like Blackwater to prosecute a war. And in Iraq and Afghanistan, they're called contractors. But really what they are, they're mercenaries. They're mercenary corporations hired by the Jewish banksters to make war against countries that resist their global economic plans. And
one world government of the banksters, by the banksters, and for the banksters.
That's right. And that's why they assassinated Lincoln, because he issued government money debt-free to the American people, and no Jew collected interest on that money. Right?
Yep.
That's why they assassinated Kennedy.
Yes. I've got one of his $5 bills in my wallet right now, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Says United States note issued in 1963, and it's got a red seal, not a green seal.
Right. And it's the Jews who created the anti-white immigration policy in America, which has now led to all of these black savage race riots where blacks wantonly smash buildings, smash cars, burn cars, kill people, attack people, and the Jew-controlled media approves. People, how many times have we told you, it's the Jews, stupid? You better start listening, because the Jews, Clay, you mentioned it, the Jews have every intention of doing in America what they did to Soviet Russia.
Now, I'm glad
they murdered 66 million Russians.
I'm glad
and they're murdering us now.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I put up, right up on the very top left-hand side of my website, a picture and an illustration, I should say, and a quote, a direct quote from a Nobel Prize winner.
Right.
All right, that would be Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And
right.
What he said, folks, is you must understand the leading Bolsheviks who took over Russia were not Russians. They hated Russians. They hated Christians. Driven by ethnic hatred, they tortured and slaughtered millions of Russians without a shred of human remorse. It cannot be overstated. Bolshevism committed the greatest human slaughter of all time. The fact that most of the world is ignorant and uncaring about this enormous crime is proof that the global media is in the hands of the perpetrators.
There you go. So Solzhenitsyn must be a conspiracy nut, right?
He went through their prison system.
Just disregard everything he ever wrote. He's just a conspiracy nut. He's an anti-Semite. He's a neo-Nazi. He's a terrorist for pointing out the truth about the Jews.
Yeah, I put a little notation below that. They call them Zionists or neocons today, and they hate Americans of all colors today, especially whites.
That's right.
And that's exactly
especially
what
whites, and even more if they're Christians.
That's right.
Even more if they're Christians.
Now,
so that's why you see Christianity being prosecuted everywhere. They're using gay lib to destroy Christian businesses. You know, where is the law that says that you must make a cake for a gay couple? And then at the same time, if the bakery happens to be owned by Muslims, Muslims have a religious right to refuse to make a cake for a gay couple. I smell a double standard here, Clay.
Yeah,
I smell a Jewish stench double standard here, Clay. That's what I smell.
Well, your nose is certainly right on, Eli. And let's talk about Jade Helm. I mean, they are setting us up for this. There is no coincidence that armies are going to be covering the Southwest in almost every state I've been in and operated in, Eli. That's, again, am I just being paranoid here? I mean... If you're paranoid, it
no,
doesn't
Clay, they're really after you.
You.
You're not paranoid. They have tried to kill you, and they may try again. That's why I told you, be careful. You're in Texas, the most hostile state of the union, because there's so many gun lovers in Texas.
That's right. That's why Jade.
Right?
That's why Jade Helm
Texas
has
changed its character since the last time I was there. Couple of years ago.
It's and there is a certain attitude. I remember, some guy trying to pick a fight with a friend of mine, and I stepped in and I said, tell you what, try me. I'm from
Right.
Texas. I'm from Texas. We like to fight.
Yeah, right. And we like to defend ourselves. Well, here, this is the point, Clay. Operation Jade Helm is designed to eliminate in the public mind the posse comitatus. Okay? Posse comitatus, most people don't know anything about posse comitatus. Posse comitatus makes the sheriff of your county the highest ranking official in that territory. All right? He outranks he outranks the president in the county that he's elected to. Nobody in the country can tell that sheriff what to do. So if they flood his neighborhood, his jurisdiction, with federal agents, with military people, he has the right to tell them to get lost. And if they don't, they are violating the law. Now, of course, this military operation, that's what this is, folks. It's a military operation, which is going to be conducted against the free American citizens, is designed to test the will of the sheriffs, of the local counties, of the, the city halls of the various municipalities, and said, we're here to protect you from terrorists. So, Clay, I have to ask you a question. Why aren't they protecting Texas, New Mexico, California, and Arizona from the Mexican drug cartels?
That's, I don't know.
Because it's a sham. It's a total scam. It's Jewish scamming. That's what it is. And it's all designed to let down the people's guard and accept the presence of a U.S., or I should say ZOG, military occupation of small-town America. They already control the cities. The cities are a lost cause, because every big city has Jews running it. It's small-town America and the Second Amendment that has the Jews worried. Okay, that's why Operation Jade Helm is being put into operation.
Now,
so
let's
what they're
talk
going to
about
do, they're going to try to disarm you, Clay. That's what they're going to try to do.
They're going to what?
They're going to try to disarm you.
Yes. Yes, that's
okay.
Got to be in the plan. Now, I am very wary of this. First of all, the special forces, the SEALs that are going into here, aren't our enemies. They are being used just the way we were used in Germany and the way we were used in Vietnam to take out the opposition. And that's exactly what Helm is. Jade Helm, I'll try to find the definition of that, but it's talking about taking out the opposition, taking out the people like you and I. You lead in the churches, and I started the militias. Yes, sir. And the militia wasn't a gang. I did it in the governor's office.
Yeah.
And it's still our only answer, because the militia is the people. Now, they want to try to set us against the soldiers and the veterans. You know, this is the divide and conquer scenario. We can't let them do that. If I see some Jade Helm soldiers operating here, I'm going up, shaking their hand, and looking them in the eye and talking to them.
Right.
We've got to do that, folks. We've got to be able to communicate. If everything that we are telling you is true, the Jews are the enemy here. And Mel Gibson was right. Son of a gun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Marlon Brando was right. Son of a gun. Yeah. And Marilyn Monroe was right.
And somebody just admitted to killing Marilyn Monroe, one of the CIA assassins, says he assassinated Marilyn.
That's right, because she knew too much. She was also, yeah, she just knew way too much. You know, she had so many. Her lawyer was Jewish. Her psychoanalyst was Jewish. Her directors are Jewish. Her producers are Jewish. Jew. And she got so sick and fed up with Jews, but she wound up converting to Judaism to marry another Jew by the name of Arthur Miller. But she was beginning to be outspokenly anti-Jewish.
Yeah,
so the Jews couldn't allow that. Yeah.
I got to share this with you. She said,
okay.
They asked her, somebody asked her, what does winning that Academy Award mean to you? She said, it means I never have to suck another Jewish dick.
That's right. That's what she said. Right? Quote unquote.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what she said. And in fact, there was one Holly Jew producer. She, you know, ran the famous casting couch.
Yes.
Right. Oh, because you know what that means. It means every good-looking actress that walks through the producer's door has to provide sex for the Jewish producer on the casting couch, right? And so Marilyn admitted to having done this several times. But there was one Jewish producer, I can't remember his name. He was so obnoxious and ugly that she refused to give him sex. So he banished her from the set, from the company. Okay? This is what Hollywood is really like, folks. And anybody who denies that the Jews control Hollywood is either a Jew or Alex Jones. He's Jewish too.
Yes.
Sorry, I forgot. Okay, folks, it's the Jews, stupid. We've been telling you this for decades. When are you going to wake up and smell the truth? Well, I guess you can't handle the truth. You prefer to be disillusioned, or illusioned rather, in the Jewish matrix of deceit. You're going to have to face reality one of these days. Anybody listening who still believes that the Jews are God's chosen people, you better start waking up, because their stormtroopers are going to burst down your door at 2 a.m. and demand your guns if you have any. You know what? The Boston Fake-a-thon was a trial run. Another phony staged event. The Jews and their stormtroopers going door to door in Boston, knocking on people's doors and in some cases forcibly entering to search their properties. On what basis? Is this Soviet Union where shock troops can come and break down your door? What about a warrant to search your property? They did the same thing during Hurricane Katrina, going door to door, confiscating the weapons of law-abiding people. You better wake up, you stupid goyim. That's what the Jews call you, stupid goyim. And so if you have any respect for somebody who calls you stupid, you are stupid, right? To respect somebody who calls you stupid, you better wake up and realize what the Jews really are. They are the synagogue of Satan, as Jesus Christ clearly tells us in John chapter 8 and Matthew chapter 23. And the Jews admit it. In their own encyclopedias, they admit that modern Judaism is the religion of the Pharisees.
Now, Eli, years ago, almost 10 years ago, maybe one of the reasons they tried to kill me is I reported on the first Homeland Security meeting at Sandia Labs, and I recorded it. I got it up, and I made a film out of it called True Face of FEMA. And Colonel John Brinkerhoff is telling you that we're in for a long war. This war may go longer than the Cold War. This war will be fought on American soil. it will be fought on American soil, and the enemy's weak. The enemy doesn't have planes and tanks and bombers, and so they're going to use unconventional methods. The enemy he's talking about is you. And he said we're going to, in case of a single outbreak of smallpox in a major metropolitan area, we'll need 400,000 well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops to control the American people, because some of them just won't follow orders. In other words, some of us won't line up on that converted Walmart parking lot to get a vaccination that will give us a disease that has been eradicated in the United States for 100 years.
Yeah, now, here again, this is more proof, absolute proof, that the mainstream media is not to be believed. Remember last summer they tried to convince us that there was going to be an Ebola epidemic? And then everybody needs to line up and get their vaccinations. How many people in America actually got the disease? 2. And all the media frenzy about, oh, we have to institute government vaccination programs to prevent this serious outbreak of disease. Well, it never happened, Clay. It never happened. It's a joke. The Jew-controlled media is an absolute laughable joke.
Well, it is exactly the reason.
They don't apologize. They don't apologize for their fear-mongering. They just go on to the next fear-monger reporting.
This is the reason when the mainstream media tried to convince you, us, that BATF had to go in there and murder 17 little children to save them from a child molester. It's that was a little much for me. That's why I started Free American. That's why I started this radio show.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you want to talk about a child molester, let's talk about Leo Frank some more. Or how about those rabbis who actually, after performing the circumcision on little boys, they actually put their mouth on the open wound and sucked the blood off that little boy's penis. And several rabbis in New York City were responsible for the death of such boys by giving them herpes. When was the last time the New York Times reported about that? Or about the sex slave trade going on in Israel, where they entice pretty young white women from poor Eastern Bloc countries and promise them high-paying jobs as maids or secretaries. And then they have their passports taken from them, and then they are forced to work as sex workers, exotic dancers in Jewish brothels, where the rabbis partake of the sinful deed on a daily basis. Busloads of rabbis get bussed into these brothels on a daily basis. Folks, wake up! Realize that everything the Jews claim to be is nothing but theater, and they are the synagogue of Satan. And then you have the Jewish involvement in drug smuggling. And why do you think the Taliban had to be overthrown in Afghanistan?
They were destroying the opium poppy crops.
There you go.
By the way, folks, this is all detailed for you. The whole involvement of George Bush and Bill Clinton in the drug business is all listed there, and the story laid out for you in Mystery Babylon, the New World Order Unveiled. Operation Watchtower. I came across that information 25 years ago, and when I every time I try to revive the interest or expose it more, they go after one of my businesses, some of my people, threaten my advertisers, and try to keep me demonized and keep you from listening to or supporting the Free American.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, it's process of demonization. Anybody who has the audacity to speak or print the truth about this corrupt Jewish world order must be demonized or assassinated. That's just the way it works. You know, and you know from personal experience. They haven't tried to kill me yet, but they have attacked my websites constantly, and you know, they've kicked me off of numerous radio networks. Okay, to the point where I finally had to get my own radio network. Let me give a plug here for EurofolkRadio.com, and of course the work that Clay and I have been doing. Clay continues to do that work on his website, freeamerican.com, and my website is EurofolkRadio.com. In addition to my Christian identity website, www.anglo-saxonisrael.com, where you can learn all about Christian identity, why the white race is the Israelites of the Bible and the Jews are imposters. Okay, so everything that Clay and I are doing is exposing the lies of the Jews, and we're trying to help you folks. The Jews demonize us for trying to help you. Okay? The Jews demonized Jesus for trying to help the Christians. And they're still doing it today. This is how evil organized Jewry really is. Folks, it's time for you to wake up. Anybody who still believes that the Jews are God's chosen people is a stupid goyim. And the Jews themselves will tell you so. That you're a stupid goyim. Actually, they don't say that publicly. They just say that to each other and snicker.
By the way, you know, this jade helm logo that they got of the two arrows and the sword, that there's a blurred out picture in the middle. I found out what that is. It's a wooden shoe, and the wooden shoe is supposedly what the Jews were forced to wear in the concentration camps.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, the clog, as the Dutch call it, the clogs, right? So the clog is designed to clog up the works of the American Constitution. That's the secret symbolism of the wooden shoe. Yeah. And, of course, Jade Helm is 815. There's 8 letters, Jade Helm, and the letter 15 is 2015. It goes from July 15th through August 15th through September 15th. By the way, and Doc Waterman and I have done a couple of shows on this subject as well, that both Rabbi Kahn, who wrote a book, I forget the name of the book, but, The Harbinger, in which he declares that America is going to be visited by God by some catastrophe on September 15th, which is just 3 days before the end of Jade Helm, because we're not supporting the Israelis enough. Okay? And he claims that Isaiah 9, 10, and 11, or Isaiah 9, verses 10 and 11, predict a judgment of America yet to come. All right? And so I've studied these verses very, very carefully, and those verses have absolutely nothing to do with America, and they have everything to do with the captivity of the Israelites by the Assyrians. Okay? This is something, so he's taking what we know, absolutely know, to be the prophecy of the captivity of the 10 northern tribes and their subsequent dispersion in the European wilderness. He's taking that doctrine, which is clearly spelled out in Isaiah 7 through 10, and he totally fictitiously applies it to the modern day of America simply because, we've got Isaiah 9, verse 11, 9/11, 9. Oh, that must have something to do with 9/11, 2001. You see the logic here, Clay?
Yes.
You see the Jewish logic here?
Well,
and then John Hagee comes up with this blood moons nonsense.
One other thing.
They're predicting They're predicting they're going to stage another 9/11 type event in America during Jade Helm.
Well, they're always pretty good about that. I mean, even look at Revelation, tells you about the RFID chip, without which you won't be able to buy or sell. I just put up a story on that by Aaron Russo. Actually, probably one of the good Jews out there that tried to tell you the truth, and then he exposed what Nicholas Rockefeller said, and they killed him.
Yeah. And Bob Dylan even wrote a song about it. Everybody must get chipped. Can you believe that people are volunteering to get chipped?
Yeah, I can believe that.
They're volunteering to get chipped.
Eli, the elite believe, and they've publicized that that the people, the American people, or the people of the world, simply aren't smart enough to rule themselves. So that's why we need the banksters.
Right.
And judging from our last elections, I'm starting to agree with them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but of course they always, once they stupidify the people, then they offer their solutions, which is nothing but like NDAA, right, the Patriot Act, and they always very cleverly name their draconian legislation as if it was well-intended, right, to the Patriot Act. Who could object to anything that's called the Patriot Act?
Yeah,
right?
How about a
well, they
private
certainly
bank?
wouldn't call it the Subversion of America Act. They wouldn't call it that, would they?
How about a private bank that they call the Federal Reserve? I mean, come on.
Right, yeah. It's not federal and there's no reserve. Right?
You know, Eli, how do we now? I just went to a militia meeting just south of here, and I think I've got a pretty good insight into that, and I'm not suggesting that anybody go out and kill anybody. That's the Jewish revolution. That's communism. You want to go out and kill somebody else, then there's something wrong there. There's something wrong with that whole picture. And
but nevertheless, Clay, they always accuse us patriots of wanting to kill people. We're the ones trying to prevent the killing of people. It's the Jews who are sponsoring and promoting it, but since they have total control of the press, they demonize people like you and me. I've never killed anybody. I've never enslaved anybody. And yet the Jews are sponsoring wars all over the globe, and they call you and me terrorists.
I said in True Face of FEMA that if you're in America, you've got about as much chance of getting killed by a terrorist as you do getting eaten by a great white in Phoenix.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Now, getting killed
but
by
now,
the cops.
since the government's importing terrorists from Mexico, your chances of getting eaten up by a shark, a mestizo shark, or an Aslan shark. By the way, those Aslan people hate white people and intend to kill us. And, of course, the Jew media is not informing you of that. They cover that up, too. And we have a certain congressman named Luis Gutierrez, who is one of the conspirators, destroying white America for the benefit of mestizo communists. Okay? The good thing, I have to give this much credit to the Latino community. The vast majority of them are hardworking. Most of them are Catholics. They're decent people. Here in Chicago, we have a very large Latino community. By and large, the Latino community is very well behaved. You know, we have the Latin Kings and the Latin Eagles, and a few other Latin gangs, but they're not nearly as bad as the Crips and Bloods and the black gangs. Not nearly as bad. And if anything, the Latino gangs will be fighting the black gangs sooner than later. And I think that's already happening in L.A.
Yes.
Okay. So, because the Latinos don't like blacks either, and blacks don't like the Latinos. So, but the blacks have been conditioned to use the Jewish tactic of playing the persecution card. Oh, we're so persecuted, we can't get a job. Whitey won't hire us. Well, if you come out of a Jew-controlled public stupidification, what did you call it earlier?
Public fool system.
Public fool system. If you come out of the public fool system, you can't even read and write, thanks to the Jewish public fool system. How do you expect to get a job? Why are you blaming Whitey for something that Jewish liberals have created?
I want to ask you about solutions, because we're not going to get any solutions if every one of the churches that you go to, folks, has a Masonic cornerstone on it.
Right.
Or if you want to listen to John Hagee and just wait until somebody lifts you up and teleports you to a giant starship somewhere.
Right.
I mean, come on, folks.
Well,
there ain't no rapture. It ain't going to happen. This is all more Jewish lies. So our churches have been taken over. Our pastors have been bribed, and we're America's occupied by the DHS, and they intend to oppress, tyrannize, disarm, and systematically mass murder up to 90% of all Americans, just like Solzhenitsyn warned you about.
Right.
It's what's the cure here? First of all, we've got to educate people, and the fact that the best cure is to decapitate the world Zionists from their source of fiat money power by nationalizing the Federal Reserve, seizing all of its assets, arresting all of its directors, trying them for RICO, financial fraud, sedition, and treason, and then all their holdings and gains, even personal gains, property, foreign bank accounts, all assets must be seized.
Yeah, well, the Jewish criminals have to be put on trial. In fact, I have to praise Hitler for a prophecy he made in Mein Kampf. He stated in Mein Kampf that the state of Israel will be nothing but a sanctuary for Jewish criminals.
A safe country, I've called it.
Yeah. And that's what it's been. Because, and even Bill Clinton proved that by pardoning Jewish mobsters who were in the FBI was after. Okay, so this just proves the clout the Jews have while they claim to be persecuted. All right, there was a reason why American Christians did not want Jews to come to America. It's because they knew that the Jews have destroyed and degraded and what's the word I'm trying to think of, where you abuse your victim and enjoy doing it. There's got to be a word for that. And that's what the Jews have done to America. Just look at what Hollywood has done. Just look at what Hollywood has done to, the Jewish Hollywood has done to white Christian America. Just look at the filth, the disgusting, I can't even call it entertainment. It's manipulation. That's what it is. It's Jewish manipulation via the movie screen. That's all it is. You can't call it entertainment anymore. It's disgusting. Every woman who becomes an actress must disrobe for the camera, as directed by her Jewish director and produced by the Jewish producer and the Jewish-owned movie company.
Yeah, the word you were looking for, Eli, was sadism. Sadist. They're sadist.
That's right. It's sadomasochism. That's the formula. Yeah, and you see all these Jewish homosexuals parading themselves around on television. It's all Jewish. And yet people are in denial about the Jewishness of it all. It's so blatantly obvious, and the Jews are. In fact, I just put up a video about the movie Caddyshack and Caddyshack 2, showing that it's nothing but Jewish mockery of wasps. And the hero in both movies is a Jewish rebel who mocks white Christian culture and glorifies in destroying white Christian culture. If you look at those two movies, you will see that that's what those two movies are all about. And so I invite people to go to Your Folk Radio and watch the documentary about Caddyshack and how the Jews used the media, the Holly Jew, to destroy white Christian culture. I mean, it's sickening and disgusting what Hollywood has done to America. Absolutely sickening. And of course, Clay, during World War II and leading up to World War II, Jewish Hollywood was producing all kinds of anti-Nazi propaganda movies. And of course, it was under the Jew-loving FDR, and the Delano side of his family is Jewish, 100% Jewish, put on trial innocent Americans simply because they were anti-war. And the ADL, to bring up the devil's spy master, was using the mass media to call any anti-war protester a Nazi. So, in other words, you can't be anti-war, if it's World War II, you can't be anti-war and not be a Nazi. And they did that to Elizabeth Dilling, and they actually did it to, who was the aviator? I have a mental block.
Lindbergh.
Lindbergh. They did it to Lindbergh, too.
They kidnapped his son, too.
Yes. Yeah, and his father, Charles Lindbergh Sr., was a tremendous opponent of the Federal Reserve Bank. He publicly said that the Federal Reserve Act, if passed, will be the worst piece of legislation that the American people have ever had, and he was absolutely right. So anybody who opposes the Jew world order must be demonized, must be lied about, and of course, your personal life and my personal life, they'll try to find any tidbit. And of course, we all make mistakes, don't we, Clay? Right?
Yes.
But if the Jews want to demonize you, as they did Gary Hart, when they decided they didn't have any more use for him, and they invited him to a yacht party, and they invited a pretty young thing in a bikini to sit on his lap, and that photograph was plastered all over the newspapers in America and killed his political career, right? So if they don't literally assassinate you, they will assassinate your character.
That's right. Clay's
This
selling
is the
that
power that Jews
book.
have.
Clay's selling that book to raise money for Snitch Name Huevos. Come on, it's the most fantastic.
No,
line.
Clay, you raise that money because you're a Nazi.
And a racist, and he's anti-Semitic too.
Right. This is how it works, folks. I mean, if you can't see through Jewish lies, you are one of the stupid goyim that the Jews laugh about. They're laughing at you if you believe their lies. But of course, this is how all con games work. All con games require a patsy to believe the con game. And so, and this is true even of many Jews, Clay, because most Jews don't even realize how cynically the Zionist establishment and how B'nai B'rith and the ADL exploit the little Jew. Because what they're actually doing, here's how the ADL and B'nai B'rith works. They go into the Jewish community and say, there's a Nazi under every bed. There's a terrorist under every bed. There's an anti-Semite right around outside your door, ready to attack you. Please donate your money to the ADL. And these stupid Jews believe this stuff, and they'll start writing checks to the ADL and to the American Jewish Committee and to AIPAC. But what they don't realize is that throughout history, the little Jew has always acted as the buffer between the reaction and the Jewish bankster.
My grandmother was Jewish. How can you say all those nasty things about the Jews? My grandmother was Jewish.
Right.
You know, that's why I tell people today, I don't care who your grandmother slept with. I don't care.
Yeah, right.
I care about what you're doing today. And these Jews,
about what's going on now.
these
Right.
Jews out there are just as deluded, if not more so, than the Judeo-Christians out there.
That's right.
They
Yeah.
want to believe
Well, see, the
somehow.
Jewish community is kept terrorized by this boogeyman, constantly dredged up by organized Jewry, by all the big Jewish organizations. And the little Jew is just as manipulated and lied to as the Judeo-Christian. Absolutely right.
That sounded like you were just talking about me there, describing me there.
Right. We can't get away from this pervasive deceit that has been created by the Talmudic rabbi, and of course their Judeo bankers. Now, this and despite the fact that the Bible forbids lies, forbids usury, forbids taking advantage of people, etc., etc. So, nevertheless, and the Bible predicts this, that in the end times there will be a great apostasy. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And people will abandon biblical law. Look around you. Do you see Christians obeying the laws of the Bible? No. Do you see Jews obeying the laws of the Bible? No. Who do you see obeying the laws of the Bible? There's only one group. It's Christian identity. We're the only ones. We're the only ones who are not apostates.
And yet
The
they
world is all
come in.
apostate.
Again, the reason I started writing Mystery Babylon with you was because of the way they were trying to demonize Christian identity along with the militias.
Right.
Militia is the
Patriots.
American people, folks.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and the militia is every able-bodied man, and I would conscript women too, above the age of 15, who are strong enough to carry a rifle or any kind of weapon to defend America. That's the militia.
Yes.
It's not some official government organization. And our Constitution does not authorize sending troops overseas. Does not authorize that at all. It only operates defense of our shores. Okay? So what we've got here is a super humongous global superstate, namely the Jew World Order, otherwise known as the United Nations, which the Rockefellers planted in New York City, to take control of our country and redirect away from the Constitution to the UN Charter. And of course, the UN Charter was written by the super capitalist Nelson Rockefeller and the super communist spy Alger Hiss.
Correct.
Working together to depose the American Constitution in favor of the UN Charter. This is reality, folks. Call me a conspiracy theorist. No, this is conspiracy fact. Okay?
That's correct.
So this is what, and Clay, to get to your point, and we kind of danced around the issue, what can we do to turn this around? Well, the way I look at it is we're in the same situation today as the Founding Fathers were. Our country has been totally taken over by military occupation and Jewish banksters. So instead of the Bank of England and the British troops, now we have the Federal Reserve, which is a branch of the Bank of England, and the militarization of America's police departments.
Yes.
It's the same thing.
And that's this whole Jade Helm thing. It's to
That's
get
right.
you upset is to make you fear your soldier, your own soldiers.
Right.
Why would we fear our own soldiers? I will, if I see a Jade Helm operation and I see our soldiers, I will walk up into the middle of it and shake their hand and make sure they understand who they are fighting for, who they're supposed to be fighting for, because they you know, I signed up for Vietnam. Let's go to Vietnam, boys. You know, I want to know weapons. I want to fight. I'm a Texan. I want to kill somebody.
Right.
You know?
But here, Clay, the only resource we have is the truth. And praise Yahweh for giving us the internet to expose the truth. Because in colonial days, they had the committees of correspondence, by which patriots could communicate with one another, bypassing British Jewish propaganda and the British Jewish money system. Benjamin Franklin said the real reason for the American Revolution was the fact that the British government refused to allow the colonies to have their own money. We have to have Jewish money instead. That's what we got with the Federal Reserve Bank. That's what the colonies had with the Bank of England. Folks, we're in the same situation, but it may actually be 10 times worse because the Jews also control our minds, let alone our pocketbooks and our government. See, they know that in America, America could not be pushed over like Christian Russia, because the peasants of Christian Russia had no weapons with which to defend themselves.
And we do.
Because the Second Amendment exists, they cannot push us over, and the Second Amendment represents a serious threat to their eventual takeover. That's why they're using Operation Jade Helm as put their hand on your shoulder, say, there now, we don't mean you any harm. We're not going to take your guns away. We're not going to take your liberty. You're not your freedom of speech, your freedom of... And then the next thing you know, they're clobbering you over the head.
I've told people...
All we can do is educate people and get them to prepare for the worst, because the worst is coming.
You know, I've been a part of a demonized group pretty much my whole life. You know, when I started riding motorcycles with other people, if both of us were wearing leather, which you do if you're smart, you know, suddenly we were demonized. We were demonized over there.
Right. A steel horse I ride, right?
Yep.
Motorcycles are a lot faster than horses.
Yep, and this whole thing, though, again, they wanted you to be afraid of the motorcycle gangs. It wasn't a gang, it was a club, and we all had something in common. But they were afraid of us being organized.
Some Christian motorcycle clubs. They're not all Hell's Angels.
That's right. And the Hell's Angels ain't all bad. You know?
Yeah.
I know a lot of them. They were great men, great people. You know, I still kind of regret.
And there's even white nationalist motorcycle clubs who are prepared to do what they have to do to defend themselves against Jewish tyranny.
I still, I still think Sonny Barger got a little overexcited about me trying to date his ex-wife. I think that was a shame. But
hey, right. Clay, I just noticed something.
What's that?
Today's show, for the very first time, has not been subject to technical difficulties. Do you think maybe they've just decided to give up?
No,
right?
But I think that I might, maybe they got sidetracked somewhere else. But
they're too busy with Jade Helm. Right?
And I'm right in the middle.
So let's not worry about Clay and Eli, because in 6 months we'll have total control of Texas.
That's
and
right.
Perhaps Illinois.
By
the way, there's more gun owners in Illinois than there are military troops in our military. I just want them to think about that. And they're not going to give up their guns. any foolish military personnel who actually believe that they can make war against the American people are soldiers from the pits of hell. And that's what they're training our military to do, to make war against the American people. That's what Operation Jade Helm is. It's not just another peaceful exercise. Absolutely not. It's the beginning of the war on the Second Amendment. That's what it is.
It is.
So they can let us talk because they figure in a few months, it'll be all over. Well, that's what they figure.
Let me look at this. I want you to understand, folks. Jade Helm. Now, I had Colonel Gordon Duff on. I had him on a few days ago, and he says, "Don't get too excited about this. It's just a military exercise. The military is waking up to the Jewish control. They call it the Khazarian Mafia." And pretty good description of that. But this is your chance to get right into it. This is what I'm doing. I walked into the city council office. I want to talk to the city council about this whole Jade Helm. I want to make the city council aware of this. This is, and let me give you from theirs, the commander of the United States Army Special Operation Command seeks a written invitation and approval from local officials to conduct realistic military training, RMT, within
I don't like that word realistic. I don't like that word realistic.
For joint military.
Is that virtual war? Is that virtual war or realistic war?
Now, the definition of this is vital. You need to hear this.
Yeah.
This is
right.
Realistic military training. RMT is training conducted outside of federally owned property. The RMT process is designed to ensure proper coordination between DoD representatives and local and regional authorities. This is collaboration in wartime, folks.
Right.
They're setting you up. And this is a 8-week joint military and interagency unconventional warfare exercise conducted throughout Texas or New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado.
It's a military takeover of America, a total violation of posse comitatus. So one of the things we need to do is alert the sheriffs in all of these states that they are the jurisdictional leaders, not any military, not any FBI, not any CIA, not any federal arm of Obama's dictatorship. They are the jurisdiction, the top leader of jurisdiction in their county. And they have the ability to tell these Jade Helm invaders to go to hell. Here, I have, because what we're saying is so much confirmed by our book, Mystery Babylon. Everybody needs to read that book, Mystery Babylon. You can order it from Clay's website. Go online at Clay's website, freeamerican.com, and order a copy of this book because it predicts what's happening today. I have this quote from Jeffrey Mark, an English writer on monetary affairs, and it's very important that people understand how the Jews use their banking operations to manipulate, control, and destroy the countries they reside in. Mr. Jeffrey Mark says this about the ramp-up to World War II. Hitler, in effect, has declared a tentative war against international finance and all foreign-loaned capital, and it is certain that a large amount of the opposition generated against his manifestly sincere internal reconstruction policy in Germany is due to this fact. Okay? Why are all of these countries being marshaled against Germany? It's international finance marshaling against Germany's barter, system of barter, by which they trade with other nations without having to borrow money from Jew banksters. Let's continue. France is working hand in hand with international finance, using the cat's paw of the League of Nations to tighten her stranglehold on Germany through the financial control of the surrounding nations, and the servile and finance-suborned press has been deliberate in its efforts to discredit Germany throughout the world by the dragging of red herrings of all shapes and smells across the trail. Sounds like what's happening to us in America. Anybody who speaks out against the Jewish banking system and international finance gets demonized and called all kinds of names. This is nothing new, Clay. We're just the latest victims of it. The policy of the Nazis is instinctively rather than factually in opposition to international finance, but the seeds of a conflict of tremendous dimensions are already sown, and it looks as if the powers of usury will force Great Britain to join France in an effort to crush Germany today, just as they forced her to fight a battle for usury in combination with Germany against the continental system of Napoleon in the last century, which we reported upon in Mystery Babylon. What did the Jews do there? They financed all the sides of the Napoleonic Wars.
That's right.
That's what they did, and that's what they're doing now. You have to understand that the Jewish international banking system is public enemy number one. It is the most evil syndicate, black market, mafia syndicate that the world has ever known, and it's called Mystery Babylon because nary a person can understand how it works.
We've got articles up on the website talking about the dual purpose of Jade Helm revealed. This is Dave Hodges who has put this out. He featured yesterday Rick Joyner's prophetic dream, and we also exposed the fact that that blurred out logo in the middle was a wooden shoe, a clog.
Right.
And the militias were formed to fight back, according to this Jade, to this dream of Rick Joyner. But this threat, they are again trying to make you afraid, and they want you to go out and kill a soldier because then that'll open the doors to you being the terrorist. One of the things I've said here, Eli, is about this. This isn't a revolution. We are protecting and defending the Constitution, which I took an oath to do.
That's right.
And this isn't to overthrow the government. It is to overthrow foreign control over the government.
Yeah. Well, Clay, the founders of America were the pastors of the American Revolution, who had a Bible in one hand and a flintlock in the other. Today, we have a wimpified Christian clergy that is acting in lockstep with the very forces that were the enemy of America in colonial times. The churches have been utterly perverted to become cat's paws and what's the word? Lapdogs. That's the word I'm looking for. Lapdogs of international finance. Whether they realize it or not, that's what these Judeo churches have become. And they are sick and disgusting churches. In fact, that's what Jesus says of them, the last church, the church of the Laodicea, of the last church age. He says, if you are neither cold or hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth, which means, and that's the word comes from the Greek word for vomit. In other words, Jesus is nauseated by these modern wimpy Christians who refuse to fight for their rights. These are the words of Jesus, folks. And if your pastor is one of these wimpified Judeo-Christians telling you to lay down and be a doormat for this communist insurgency called the Obama administration, then you are just a gullible fool.
Well, exactly. Can you, maybe you could point out for me here, what was the difference between the current Obama administration, the Baby Bush administration, the Bill Clinton administration, and the George Granddaddy Bush?
Right. Well, I had a lot of fun with the transition from the Bush II administration to the Obama administration. I predicted, and my prophecy has come true, that there would be no difference whatsoever in any of the policies between Bush and Obama. Absolutely no difference, and there hasn't been. In fact, Obama takes credit for pulling us out of Iraq, but that was actually part of the deal that Bush created. So it was actually Bush's plan to begin with. In any case, I said Obama would just be a black version of George Bush, and then I realized that both of them looked like the Mad Magazine cover boy, Alfred E. Newman, right? And they're one and the same creature, created by the international Jew. Right? The only thing different in the Obama administration is he has empowered blacks to riot, rape, and murder. That's the only difference. Otherwise, those two critters are exactly the same.
And folks, you are listening to right now probably your greatest hope. You know,
right? Well, it's the truth.
Yeah. We wrote the mystery book, Mystery Babylon. And we go back 2,000 years. Not only do you have the history of the Rothschilds and their control over America and our banking system for 300 years, we go back 2,000 years. And, you know, we're not putting down Christianity here, except Judeo-Christianity, which I think you could call satanic Christianity. Is that...
That's right. That's right. That's what it is. And that's why Jesus is nauseated by it. But, of course, most of these Judeo-Christians don't understand their Bibles. They've been lied to by the Judeo-Christian clergy, and who are nothing but lapdogs for the Jews. Certainly John Hagee and Joel Osteen. Joel Osteen has nothing but praise for Obama. I wonder how he feels about the black riots in Baltimore.
Well, let me ask you about something. I just had John Denugent on my show yesterday, and I had tried to have him on Hitler's birthday, but I ended up with Gordon Duff.
Okay.
But he says it's time for a new church. And I'm actually ordained here by the THC Ministries out of Hawaii. Since Christie got out of jail, Roger Christie got out of jail now, but he's forbidden to have anything to do with the hemp ministries, the cannabis ministry, THC Ministries. So I took it over. I already had the THC Ministries of Arizona, and I certainly believe it is the plant of renown talked about in the Bible. And now in Colorado, and I wrote about this transition 45 years ago, but Colorado is doing quite well financially, and without the support of the prison industry that the rest of America is backing and involved in. You know, a lot of the Christians, I think, drugs are isn't marijuana a gateway drug? Well, absolutely. If you got to buy it from a drug dealer, If you grow it in your backyard, it ain't a gateway to nothing except health.
Right. Well, there's certainly a lot to be said for medical marijuana. It has helped loads of people, and the reason why the medical establishment opposes and has opposed medical marijuana for the longest time is because it's cheap. Right? And you don't need it. Well, you still need a prescription for it. I mean, they still control it that way. Okay. So, but yeah, people with multiple sclerosis, with nausea, it helps a lot of ailments. It really does. Okay, and they have isolated the compound of medical marijuana, which doesn't get you high, so you can use that version of it, okay, and not feel guilty, and et cetera, et cetera. But of course, the real drug business is the illegal street corner variety, which makes the most money for the dealers. I said, let's look at it this way, Clay. Let's say overnight we made alcohol illegal. Okay. Do you think that the black market would just flourish overnight? Would it not flourish overnight?
Yes.
Yeah, it would. It would. So you have to have a sensible policy in dealing. If alcohol is illegal, why is marijuana illegal? Okay. My position is I don't want any drivers out there running over people, whether they're drunk on alcohol or high on pot. I know people who have been injured by a driver who is just, because it does warp your sense of time. Shouldn't be high while driving. You shouldn't be drunk while driving. So there is a double standard for marijuana here. That if they're going to be rational about alcohol, they should apply the same principles to marijuana. I'm in favor of very harsh punishments to anybody who drives drunk, and I don't care what drug he's on. And a lot of these drugs, for example, it's even worse with legal drugs such as Ritalin, and the drugs that they feed. I think the Columbine massacre.
Yes.
So the two boys were on prescription tranquilizers.
Yes.
Sedatives. And they murdered all those people while they were on the SSRIs. Okay? The media is not telling you about this. Okay? So there's so much that goes unreported by the Jew-controlled press that people, they're doing a disservice to the American people by not exposing the fallibility of these drugs and the danger of these drugs, not to mention vaccination, which is totally worthless and dangerous. Okay? So here again, the world is nothing but Jewish theater, and it's the Jewish matrix of deceit. Once you begin to understand that the Jews control every aspect of the society and use it against the honest citizen, then you will begin to comprehend the Jewish matrix of deceit. And then, only then can we have a rational society again.
Well, it's what we're working for. I'm writing a book about that now, another book. I'll build this one as fiction. But
Mr. Babylon is not fiction.
No, it's not. It's not. And but my fiction's more believable.
Right.
That's a sad state of
that's what Hollywood counts on, right?
Yes, sir.
As in Inglorious Bastards. It's okay for a Jew to smash in the brains of a Nazi, but to suggest that the Jews are doing that to innocent people, well, they are, aren't they, in Palestine?
Yes, they are.
And they've done it to Christian Russia, and they're doing it by smearing. See, and they're using proxies to kill white people. They're using black mobs to kill white people, and
That's
black
right.
rapists to rape white women. So the Jew can step back and say, "Oh, it's not my fault. Look who's doing." No, it's the Jews.
All right, this has been a wonderful show. We're out of time. I got to do one commercial. Stay with me through this commercial.
Right.
It's this is for my Friday guest here, Russell Papalardo. It's
Hello, friends. This is RJ, the Mighty Phoenix. Friends, if you're a business owner and need capital to sustain or accentuate your business, and if you've been in business for 2 years or more, and your credit scores are low as 500, I can help you. Credit scores don't pay back with money that you borrow. Credit scores are only weapons being used against you in the war on small business. You pay back money that you borrow with business monies earned. So if you have 6 recent bank statements and your business is active, and as I said, you've been in business for over 2 years, I can get you money within 8 business days. Contact me at R as in Russell, J as in James, P as in Peter, P as in Peter again, A as in Arthur, P as in Peter again, A as in Arthur, at yahoo.com. That's RJTPAPA at yahoo.com. And if you're not in business and you need to earn extra cash and you don't want to go out and work for someone who's going to take advantage of you, or you don't want to spend the money to gas and get paid minimum wage, you can work with me, not for me, and earn big commissions. And all you need to do is place ads on the computer, on the internet, on Craigslist, on Backpage, on other sites, in the financial section. Only 15 minutes a day. Again, contact me at rjppapa@yahoo.com. Leave your cell phone number. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. And we'll discuss the issue. I can help you. Again, rjppapa@yahoo.com.
All right, we got one caller from 321 area code. I don't have much time here. What can we do for you, sir? 321 area code. You called in. You held up your hand. I'm talking to you. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I got you now.
Why you go on shows like this? I mean, I just don't understand it. What would you go on a show where a guy is talking about Bible readers or child molesters, and now you're on the show 2 days later, another guy on yesterday got torched up behind me when he was a kid by his white father, and he's supposedly a white, pro-white guy.
Oh, Eli, this is Scumley here. He calls in occasionally. And we put his number up here. Ha! Ha! This is Scumley, 321-987-2251. Eli James is my guest today.
Yeah. Well, okay, Clay, I've got to go. I got work to do. So there's been a great pleasure exposing reality for the listening audience today. And we just got to keep telling the truth until people wake up, because the revolution is coming. We've been predicting a race war, and it's here.
Okay, we're here. And
all right, thanks a lot, Clay.
Thank you. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Yahweh bless. Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll stop that.